It's time to talk about the important issues for the natural state. And there's only one place to turn for that. Opportunity Arkansas's Nic Horton. You can find Nic's work at opportunityarkansas.org.
Welcome back to First News. I'm Rebecca Davis in for Toby Howell today. And this is where you come to learn about where your tax dollars are being spent. So the Department of Human Services, they announced a Medicaid waiver that they said includes a work requirement for able-bodied adults. But a closer look at the details kind of reveals something quite different. So joining us now to break that all down is Nic Horton, CEO of Opportunity Arkansas. Good morning, Nic. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning. It's great to be with you as always.
So the Department of Human Services, they did announce this work requirement for Medicaid expansion enrollees, but it's not exactly, kind of what they're telling us. So what is going on? Can you walk us through what exactly is in this expansion or the work requirement, rather?
Yeah. I mean, this is it's a big disappointment, frankly, because this is something that I think a lot of us have really been anticipating for a long time. And you look at states around the country, really purple states, even Ohio, Georgia, Indiana, states that are to the left of the middle, certainly in comparison to Georgia or to Arkansas, rather, are moving forward with real work requirements for their Medicaid, Obamacare expansions. And Arkansas, we're saying that we're doing that, but again, as you said in the opening there, the details really don't quite line up with that. And so what we're being told by the Department of Human Services in their waiver, and this is all in black and white, it's on their website, you can read it for yourself and decide for yourself, but in black and white, what the plan that has been put forth by DHS says explicitly, no one's going to be removed from the Medicaid program. No one is going to be disenrolled if they don't fail, if they fail to meet the work requirement. And the quote work requirement itself is actually not a work requirement. That is really all that they're even attempting to do is to tell Arkansans who are in this program, which by the way are all able-bodied working age adults, most of whom are childless. They're not at home caring for dependent children. They're work capable in the vast majority of cases. They should be working.
Yeah.
But all they have to do to meet the quote work requirement is comply with these personal development plans. Now, what's a personal development plan? Well, we don't really know because that information hasn't really been detailed. But DHS is going to come up with these personal development plans. They're going to spend $43 million. $43 million.
That's a lot.
On success coaches.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
On success coaches. And for context for folks out there listening, the state income tax brings in about $50 million per tenth of the income tax rate. So we could take another tenth off your income tax for what we're now proposing to spend on success coaches. And these success coaches are going to get together with the Medicaid enrollees, and they're going to tell them, we really think it'd be great if you could get a job, and here's some ideas, and maybe we're going to give you some resume coaching. We're going to do all these things that sound wonderful that I'm not, I don't think anyone's opposed to.
Sure. But the action has to be taken.
That's exactly right. And there is the only incentive that the enrollees have to actually comply with those personal development plans and those coaches is an actual consequence, which is why a work requirement works, which is why we have it in food stamps and cash welfare and unemployment, every other welfare program. There's some semblance of an actual requirement, but you don't have a requirement unless there are consequences, unless folks actually have to follow through on it. Now, there's exemptions and there's lots of different ways that people can meet the requirement, but there has to be an actual requirement or folks are not going to comply. And frankly, you see in DHS's own plan, their cost savings projections are so low that frankly, I think that's an admission that they know this is not going to work. They know this is not really going to reduce the rolls or reduce dependency. And it's a big disappointment.
Yeah, no, definitely to be using $43 million of our money on what sounds like just a lot of talking around and wishing and hoping and not a lot of action taking place. And then no consequences, too, for not, meeting your work requirements. And there's no accountability here is what it sounds like, Nic. You mentioned some other states, too, kind of as we started talking about this. How do we compare our work requirements to other states? Are we kind of on par with what others are doing? Are we leading our own path?
No, and again, that kind of adds to the disappointment here because Arkansas actually under Governor Hutchinson, we were the first state in history during the previous Trump administration, the first 4 years of President Trump, we were the first state in the country in American history to have a Medicaid work requirement. And we had a really strong work requirement where we said, just like we do in food stamps, just like we do in cash welfare, if you're able-bodied and you're working age and you're able to work, we're going to ask you to do something. I mean, these Medicaid plans that we're paying for this population that the hardworking taxpayers are paying for are worth almost $10,000 a year.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about $900 per month per person that the taxpayers are spending on these plans. So it's not too much to ask for the people who are getting those benefits that are paying nothing, that are doing nothing, that don't have a time limit, that don't have really any skin in the game whatsoever. It's not too much for them to ask to volunteer,
right,
to get some training, to do something. And if you don't do it, you are going to face sanctions. You are going to face consequences. So our current plan for Medicaid, that was Governor Hutchinson's plan. It worked really well. We were on track to save $300 million a year, real savings, massive savings. And we could certainly replicate that now, and we should be. But our current plan, again, is not doing any of that. Our current plan says all you have to do is say that you want to comply with these personal success coaches. You might get a temporary suspension of your private insurance, but you're still going to get Medicaid, and then you can get your private insurance back if you raise your hand and say, oh, I intend to do better. There's no real sanctions. The waiver specifically says that there will be no minimum hour of work hours required. So this is just up to the personal development coaches, who we don't even know who they're going to be.
Right.
I mean, are these going to be new state employees? Are these going to be contracted positions? Are these people with any sort of qualifications to do this? But again, at the end of the day, it's all window dressing unless there are actual consequences for people not complying, because without a consequence, there is no look. I tell people all the time when it comes to food stamps and some of these other programs, we already have a voluntary work requirement. It's called working.
Yeah.
Like we already have these enrollees
That's right.
already have the option to get a job or to better themselves if they want to. And unfortunately, the reality is the vast majority of them are not doing that. And that's why a work requirement is so important. You look at our economy today in Arkansas, we've got 80,000 open jobs.
Right.
We've got almost 300,000 people that are on this Medicaid expansion program, and most of them aren't working. So why don't we, 2 + 2 = 4, why don't we take those people that aren't working, that are working age, and get them in the workforce,
get them outside, get them
and
working,
help grow our economy, and fill those open jobs, and get them paying into the system instead of taking from the system.
Instead of paying out.
It's just common sense.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that too, Nick. It looks like the people might be the ones benefiting from all this are going to be the success coaches that get paid to try to build this system up and things like that. But Nick, I appreciate your time as always. We appreciate these Opportunity Arkansas Wednesdays, and you letting us know about where our tax dollars are going. We'll talk to you again next week, Nick. All right?
Yeah. If I could just say one final thing on this, we do have a chance. DHS is currently doing a 30-day public comment period on this.
Okay.
And so there is an opportunity for the public to speak up, and we've been encouraging people to say, contact DHS and say, this is not acceptable. This is not a real work requirement. We want a real work requirement like they're doing in Indiana and Georgia and Ohio. We want a real work requirement like we have in food stamps and cash welfare and all of our other welfare programs. This Medicaid is by far the most expensive of all of the programs, and we have the least amount of restrictions and runways back into the workforce. No time limit, no work requirement, nothing. So I would encourage folks, go to DHS's website, look for the pathway to it's called the Pathway to Prosperity Waiver. If you Google that, search for that, you're going to find an email address where you can send in public comments. Doesn't have to be anything fancy, but just tell DHS, hey, we want a real work requirement with real consequences. Medicaid is an important program for people that truly need it, but it's not supposed to be a lifestyle for able-bodied working-age people, and that's what it's become. And that's what it will continue to be without a real work requirement. So I'd encourage folks to do that.